I'm Courtney Smith.
And I'm Elyse Sharp.
And we are two nerds who are here to make Shakespeare easier to understand.
In this podcast, we will explore as many dimensions to Shakespeare's plays as we can by looking at the text, examining the historical context in which the plays were written, and how his plays are viewed through modern lenses of feminism, racism, classism, colonialism, nationalism, ableism, all of the isms.
We will discuss how his plays shaped both the past and present, and, as theater makers, how his plays can be responsibly performed today, all while trying our best to approach his works without giving in to Bardolatry.
So, Shakespeare anyone?
Hi, listeners. Want to support Shakespeare Anyone? Visit shakespeareanyone.com/support or check out the links in our episode description. Now, onto the episode. Hi, Elyse.
Hi, Courtney.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm doing super duper well. I just recently graduated with my Master's of Education, and it's very exciting because it's not to talk too much, listeners, because I know you're here for a mini episode. But the reason why I went to school for a Master's of Education was to figure out how to combine the work that we do here at Shakespeare Anyone podcast to education. Because Elyse and I know that many of our listeners are teachers, educators who use us as a resource in their classrooms. And to me, the thing that's really important is being able to make Shakespeare accessible, relevant, and exciting for students, and also make teaching Shakespeare easier and more fun for teachers. So my goal is to bring it into the work that we do here. And that gives us an opportunity to pitch our teacher survey.
We are looking for feedback from teachers who are specifically teaching in the secondary education space, but you can be teaching anywhere in the world, not just limited to the United States. We're looking to hear more about your experience teaching Shakespeare in the classroom, what standards you're trying to teach to, and what would make your experience easier. If you have a few minutes, we'd love to hear from you. Our survey is at shakespeareanyone.com/teacher survey in the show notes. Courtney, I just gotta say, I'm so proud of you. Now, listeners, we have a different kind of mini episode for you today. We are bringing you an episode from our Patreon back catalog. We have been making Patreon bonus content for 3 years now, and so there are quite a few episodes out there, but we realized that you may not understand what exactly makes these episodes different than episodes that you get here on our main feed. So this is our episode on Shakespeare in Love that we originally recorded in February of 2023.
Our bonus episodes tend to be casual Shakespeare-related watches. So it can range from TV shows to movies to book reviews. And we ask our Patreon patrons what kind of things they want us to watch and react to and discuss for the bonus audio. And so we took one of our Patreon patrons' suggestions, and I'm so glad we did because this is a very fun Shakespeare-adjacent bonus episode, and we are so excited to bring it to you, unlock it from the Patreon vaults, and put it here on the main feed.
Now, please enjoy.
Hi, Elyse.
Hi, Courtney.
How's it going?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to talk about this film.
Yes.
Hello, patrons.
We've got another piece of Shakespeare-adjacent media for you that we are watching for fun and reacting to.
Yes. This Shakespeare-adjacent piece of media is Shakespeare in Love, the film. So that's Shakespeare in Love from 1998. And I believe, Elyse, you have some of those credits.
Yes. It was directed by John Madden and written by Marc Norman and playwright Tom Stoppard.
I do love Tom Stoppard.
Yeah, he's all right. It stars Gwyneth Paltrow, Joseph Fiennes, Geoffrey Rush, Colin Firth, Ben Affleck, and Judi Dench.
Great cast.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this cast.
Yeah.
Also, Imelda Staunton and Anthony Sher and Mark Williams are in here.
Yes. You know, they have a nice primary cast and secondary cast. And even their tertiary characters are fantastic as well. Just all around. Love the casting.
Yeah, throw a rock in this cast and you hit a great Shakespeare actor.
Yeah.
I also forgot to mention Rupert Everett is also in kind of a large cameo, I'd call it. And Mr. Imelda Staunton, Jim Carter, is also in this movie.
Yes, he's my favorite of the tertiary characters.
Yeah. Oh, me too.
So Shakespeare in Love opens in 1593 London, and based on the title cards, we are informed that there is a rivalry between two theater companies, the Curtain and the Rose.
Mm-hmm.
The Globe wasn't built yet, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
And the movie is framed by Philip Henslowe, the theater manager.
And he's the manager of the Rose.
Of the Rose, yes. Manager of the Rose, and he is in hot water because he is in debt. And he promises these men who he is indebted to that in order to pay back his debt, there's going to be a William Shakespeare comedy, and it's going to sell out and he will be able to pay back the money that he owes. So that's the framing. So William Shakespeare is basically being thrown under the bus. Come up with a comedy and get me out of water, says Mr. Theater Manager.
Yeah. And also, this is the theater company of the Lord Admiral's men. And there's the added pressure of they've been closed for 12 weeks due to plague. And their actors have had to go tour the inns of the court.
Right. Exactly. I will say I loved all of the dramaturgical research that went into this film. All of the nuggets that we have been kind of uncovering mostly in our mini episodes. A lot of the work that we've been doing in our mini episodes really showed up in this film, and that just tickled me because it's stuff that, like, if you are going to see a Hollywood blockbuster about Shakespeare, but you don't study Shakespeare or Elizabethan England, you might not catch these things. But for the two of us and anyone else.
Yeah, for listeners of this podcast, they're like Easter eggs that are in there for us.
Yes.
I also loved that.
Even down to like the Puritan who at the beginning of the movie is yelling at everyone like, I say a plague on both their houses, a rose by any other name. And, you know, he's basically
there are so many rich historical details that are kind of like the backdrop of the story of the movie.
Yeah, they set it up so well. I'm here for all of that.
Yeah, it's set up so well. You've seen this movie before.
I have.
Okay. This is my first time seeing it in its entirety. When we talked about doing this, I was like, I don't think I've seen it. And then my partner was like, no, we've watched it together. And I was like, no, we haven't. We came to the compromise that we had not finished the movie. I had seen up into a certain point. I was like, oh, yes, I remember this. I remember Colin Firth.
Yeah.
But then after some point, I was like, yeah, I definitely do not remember the rest of this.
Right.
So, again, I think the first time I watched whatever percentage of it I watched was pre this podcast. There were definitely things that I missed. Yeah, I also wrote, Joseph Fiennes is a thirst trap in this movie.
100%.
Like, if you want sexy Shakespeare,
this is
a movie for you.
Shakespeare. Yeah, sexy Shakespeare.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that I picked up on of like, this is a great, fantastic detail. And that's what I responded to really well.
Same.
Like Will Kemp.
I was just about to say Will Kemp backstage, like running through backstage trying to like find someone to talk to. And then all of a sudden Kemp is there like in his fool outfit. And he's like, I was like, oh my gosh, that's Kemp. There he is.
Like, can I like be a tragedian? Like,
yeah. Oh my goodness.
I was like, that's so brilliant. And I was like, this could be very accurate as far as I'm aware.
Who knows?
Portrayal of Will Kemp.
Right. That play too is done at Whitehall.
Yes. Done at Whitehall Palace.
So those plays with the court for Queen Elizabeth.
And our leading lady, Viola de Lesseps.
Yes. Played by Gwyneth Paltrow.
I also loved the power that we got to see in the Master of Revels. Geoffrey Rush plays Henslowe, and he goes on this little bit of a like rant about how Burbage at the Curtain kind of just has like the Master of Revels like in his back pocket, and that Henslowe isn't favored, and that so much of the theater's ability to do theater is like
in the hands of the Master of the Revels, or the Master of Revels. Yeah. I also loved that, and this is rather early on, but I loved that Kit Marlowe is
That's exactly what I was about to talk about.
Yeah. I loved seeing him because he shows up at the casting call at the pub, or like the announcement that there's a casting call at the pub. And like,
In a bar.
yeah, there's already been an amplification of this competition that may or may not have existed between Will and Kit Marlowe. And then he shows up, and that just tickled my fancy because it's really like rounding out for me what it would have been like potentially to be a theater maker in London for Shakespeare, besides like us just thinking of him on this pedestal because he's now like the height of in our academics.
Yeah, I always love to say that, like, one, I mean, we are proudly and loudly Stratfordian, and the authorship question is classist here. But I also reject the like singular genius idea of Shakespeare, that like he's just sitting in his room writing plays from start to finish. Because for me, that is not how any playwright I've ever met works. And I think that we have, you know, evidence in his works when, you know, we're able to analyze them with especially like the technology we have today, that we're learning that there's a lot more collaboration. And I think that there's I've always thought like there had to be collaboration. They're making this in response to each other. Or, they're like having a drink at a bar and just being like, I got this idea. I don't know where it's going yet. Oh, well, I've got this. And I'm like, I have had that conversation today with playwrights.
Yeah, it's not an insular sort of like independent activity. It's a group activity.
All writing is. And I think we think of like Thoreau writing Walden, you know, and instead it's like, no, like there are editors, and Thoreau's mom like made him sandwiches every day. So
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if she read his manuscript too and gave notes.
Yeah, so I really, really loved that.
Yeah, and then branching outside of Kemp, there's also the world around Will and the people he interacts with, like Viola and the different actors and the director, and all of that is shaping this play. We first learn about this play, Romeo and Ethel the Pirate's Daughter, which I'm sure you can, if you know anything about Shakespeare, guess what direction that takes.
Well, let me tell you, it's supposed to have twins, a shipwreck, and a pirate king. So really, it could be one of two plays.
Correct. Yeah. It could go in one direction or the other, and this Shakespeare falls in love. And we head down towards Romeo and Juliet by the end of this movie. And it was neat watching, you know, how these writers imagined the world around William Shakespeare influencing what he's writing. You know, he starts out with, you know, the first act, and then he doesn't have the second, third, fourth, fifth act written. And, you know, we've got a deadline here.
He's got an actor who he needs to write a great character for because he's a member of the company who's going to make the playwright's life hell if he doesn't have a good role. And so he's like, okay, well, I've got a role for you. Here you go. Or, you know what? I've got a speech for you at the end. And how those pieces come together, and how he hears things on the street and goes, tuck that line away for later. And it's a very famous line.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cute. There's a lot of, you know, parallels to Romeo and Juliet, a lot of like Shakespeare getting inspiration for Romeo and Juliet from this relationship that he's having.
And if you know anything about Christopher Marlowe and his fate, while it is not fully corroborated and we don't 100% know what happened to Christopher Marlowe, that relationship in this movie also contributes to Romeo and Juliet. So again, he's not this genius working in an isolated room writing away. He's influenced by the world around him and the things that happen to him, which is really cute.
Or it's what we know happened, and it's portrayed in a really cute way.
That's true. The murder of Christopher Marlowe is not cute.
Yeah. So if I had to like critique this movie, I would say that like it is a big piece of historical fiction.
Yes.
And a friend of mine watched it literally the night after I did and started asking me about it. And I was like, fun fact, I just watched it. And they said, this is a great piece of fan fiction. Yeah. And how great would it be if all fan fiction, especially like biopics that are more like fan fiction, were like this? It doesn't make a mockery of the real people involved, like Blonde.
Yeah. And
it doesn't try to sanitize a spotty legacy. But that said, it is fan fiction.
It is. But you got to take it all with a grain of salt. These are, you know, how interesting can we make this? You know, we've got this great playwright and we have this really rich world, and we have a couple of pieces of fact that we can shape a story
Mhm.
around. We know that Romeo and Juliet was written between 1591 and 1593. We know the Quarto One was published in 1597. What about this and Shakespeare? Can we tell in a fictional
Right.
story, but it's
Yeah.
fiction?
It is not historical fact that this is what inspired. The same
No.
friend was like, what do we know about Shakespeare's love life? And I was like, big old
Shrug.
shrug.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things that did bug me. It was I didn't really care that that they leaned into like that Anne Hathaway and Will Shakespeare really didn't have a
Mhm.
relationship. I don't care about that. But I did not like how when Viola and Will are undressing
Mhm.
each other because they fall in love and things happen. Viola is dressed up as a male actor because that's the only way she can perform in Shakespeare's play. So she's pretending to be Master Kent. And she says, I do not know how to undress a man because she's trying to get out of her stuff. And then Shakespeare says, it is strange to me too. And I didn't like that because I was like,
Yeah.
hold on. The part of me that's like, no, no, no. No, there's a good chance he was bisexual. I also don't want him to be like,
There was
I don't know,
yeah.
it rubbed me the wrong way that they were like definitively making this Will Shakespeare
Yeah,
straight.
there
It
were
just
a
bugged
couple
me.
things in here that having knowledge of like Tom Stoppard as a playwright
Mm-hmm.
and how he tends to put it nicely, self-insert. I mean, he wrote an entire play about
Ah,
his own divorce.
right.
There were a couple moments like that for me, like the one where, and actually, like that entire sequence, so specifically, Viola de Lesseps says that like the sex is better than his plays, and I was like, well, Tom, maybe you would appreciate that because that's a hang up for you, but I know some playwrights who would be like, no, I want my plays to
My
be
plays
better.
are better. Yeah. If he's self-inserting as Shakespeare for this movie, then it's like, gotta make sure I'm straight. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know the man,
He
but
wrote an entire play about how he left his wife for an actress in one of his plays.
hmm, yeah.
So yeah, I was like, these moments feel like Tom Stoppard writing Shakespeare as Tom Stoppard, but there's so many moments where he does a great job of writing Shakespeare as a possible imagined version of Shakespeare. So
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah. I loved that like this Will Shakespeare was like everyone's like, "Oh, you're the actor, Will Shakespeare." He's like, "No, no, no. I'm a playwright and a poet." This Shakespeare was like obsessed with being known as a poet and a playwright.
I also know playwrights like that who have formerly been
Mhm.
actors and they're like, nope, I
Mhm.
don't do that anymore. I want to be known for this.
Yeah. Exactly. So I thought that that was very fun too because that's I mean a lot of what he's
Mm-hmm.
from what we know, he only would act in smaller roles once he was
Yeah.
a playwright theater share owner. So,
Oh, and that's another thing we didn't talk about. One of those details in the background is him kind of like trying to angle for becoming a shareholder in a theater. And he's like,
mhm,
okay, like give me a share in the company, give me a share in the company, as one of his like
right.
bargaining tools. And
Right.
like how his relationships with the theater owners change and fluctuate. And then how the theaters come together was nice.
It was, and I loved how Mr. Fennyman, who is the loaner, I don't know what word to use, but he's the one that originally loaned
Mm-hmm.
Henslow
Mm-hmm.
money,
Lender?
and I loved how he was so dismissive of theater at the beginning of the movie, and then by the end, when we have a bunch of things that lead to Viola playing
Mm-hmm.
Juliet on stage and Will playing Romeo on stage, he's like so overcome by this story and the impact that theater has.
Right. It's
So, I
cute.
mean, there's also cute things like that as well, like how theater changes
Yeah.
people and it can affect people. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's this whole bet that happens. Can theater accurately depict love, like real
Hmm.
love? Because it's just acting, and that eventually leads to who are in love, but
Right.
ill-fated to
Yeah.
doing that on stage. It's cute.
It is
Yeah,
cute. Yeah, it's very cute.
Colin Firth is evil. I wrote a note of Mr. Darcy. No.
Mr. Darcy, no. And Mr. Darcy with great
Yeah.
bling.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, that pearl
Pearl earring.
earring. Oh, and those
Yeah.
ruffles.
He does a great job of being a very dislikable antagonist. Not villain, but
Yes.
antagonist for our lovers.
Antagonist, yeah.
I
Yeah.
also had a little detail in the rich tapestry of historical things in this that provide the background for the story that we're watching of these two lovers. Is there's this kid who is originally hired,
I
and
love this.
he gets fired. It's like, no, you're not going to play that character. And then he goes outside, and Will goes and talks to him and says, like, basically, be like, hey, kid, like, I'm sorry you got fired. the kid's like playing with a mouse and a rat.
A rat, I think it was. Yeah, kind
Playing
of
with
like
it. They get to talking, and the kid talks about how much he loves Titus Andronicus.
Titus. Yeah. He loves part with like the heads getting cut off and the
Yeah,
mutilation.
he likes the really gory stuff.
Yeah.
And this is a kid who's just like who like continues to hang around the theater.
Yeah, we see him later as well.
But Will asks, "What's your name?" And it's John Webster.
John Webster, baby.
Who will write Duchess of Malfi, who's known for his incredibly gory works in later early modern England.
Just a nice little Easter egg for Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that detail. Again, all of those Easter eggs for those of us who study this time period outside of your high school Shakespeare.
Right.
The only real complaint I had was there were parts that were just too on the nose for me.
You don't like things on the nose.
I don't. I loved the connection between Will's relationship with Viola and how it inspired Romeo and Juliet. Sometimes it went too far and I was like, okay.
The balcony scene?
Yeah. I was like, all right. And then also they're parting and, she talks about like, oh, this play that you can write. And then it's one of his future plays. And it was just, I was like, oh, rolling my eyes, like too much, too on the nose. Like, give us less.
They really spell out that like he's going to be inspired to write 12th Night next.
Which was 8 years later.
Yes. I mean, there's timeline issues throughout the whole thing, which is kind of thing that I was like, I'm going to laugh at and set aside because, again, like that fan fiction idea is a great way to think about it. Because I was like, oh man, some of these things that they're saying are going on at the same time are a little bit like dramaturgical fun happening, and then there's like dramaturgical we decided not to care happening.
Yeah, we just turned a blind eye.
Yeah, I would agree that like there were moments where I was like, yeah, I got it. I see what you're doing here. Okay.
And that's enough.
Yeah. Can we get past this? But I still, at the end of it, I was like, I stopped taking notes at one point and I was like, this is just fun, fluffy, cute.
Yeah.
I don't dislike it, which was, I think, there was a little part of me in like the back corner of my mind because I knew that there were going to be inaccuracies and there were going to be things and I can admittedly be a bit of a pedant sometimes that I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like I was really like, I don't know if I'm going to like this. I think that's why I stayed away from it for so long. But I think that like it's fun if I wanted to be like, hey, let's take a look at like kind of how theater worked, like get an idea.
Yeah.
In that way, it's actually pretty great.
Yeah, as historical fiction, it's a great way to drop somebody into this time period who maybe has never engaged with it before and get them engaged.
Yeah.
I recommend it. I don't know if I would rewatch it, but I love the historical stuff that went into it. So I didn't hate it either. I enjoyed it. I found myself chuckling a lot.
I laughed. I had a good time. I feel like if it was on TNT, I'd be like, all right, yeah, I'll put it on.
And that's Shakespeare in Love.
Patreon patrons, if you have a piece of Shakespeare adjacent media that you would love to have us watch and respond to, please feel free to write it in the comments on this post in Patreon, and maybe we'll get to it in a future bonus episode. Thank you for listening.
I'm Kourtney Smith.
And I'm Elyse Sharp.
This is Shakespeare Anyone?
Thank you so much for listening to Shakespeare Anyone. Works referenced in this episode are available in the episode description. Our theme music is Neverending Minute by Sounds Like Sander.
If you would like to support us, visit shakespeareanyone.com/support or check out the links in our episode description. You can also hit the subscribe button, like us, leave a comment, write a review, share us on social media, tell a friend about us, all the things. We'd appreciate it. For more, you can visit our website, shakespeareanyone.com, or follow us on Instagram at shakespeareanyonepod.
Now, because you listened all the way to the end of the credits, here is a completely random Shakespeare quote for you. From Taming of the Shrew, Act 3, Scene 2, said by Tranio. 'Tis some odd humour pricks him to this fashion, yet oftentimes he goes but mean apparelled.